Very good. Let's go ahead and get started. Sean, I will just
say next or something.
Okay,
to that
well,
effect.
very well. Welcome again. Sorry for the technical issues. There, first slide. And I want to move to the next slide, please, so we can just acknowledge that we are committed to honoring all Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, and that we're working together in caring for this land and for the plants we love that also take care of us. Next. There are so many people, including all of you that are with us on this presentation tonight, from our designer, Pete Oudolf, to all the members of the Garden Club of Michigan, our donors, grounds crew, board, volunteers, bed captains, all of the visitors that come to enjoy the garden, the botanic professionals that stop by and advise and inform, contractors, growers, vendors, the Belle Isle Conservancy, the DNR, and all the inhabitants, all those creatures that live in the gardens and the meadow communities that we call Oudolf Garden Detroit. Next. Ryan Southen, I want you to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Richard is going to do the bulk of the speaking tonight, but at the end, if you have any questions regarding photography, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, just enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Next. Thank you, Ryan. And that's me. You've seen and you will hear a lot of me this evening, so we can pass on. Next. So we're going to run, and let's go ahead to the next, from the annual cutback that happens early spring, almost late winter, a cutback that we just are still finishing today, but which started last week, in which we take all the plant material that's dormant, cut it down in buffalo bites size pieces, and then run over it with a mulching mower, except for certain items, as you see some Asclepias incarnata, which is swamp milkweed, tied up there in the middle that the mower is deftly going around. This work is done for us by Taylor Beaufort Landscaping Company, highly trained and very efficient company in this kind of planting. So those Asclepias incarnata, or swamp milkweed stalks, are left up because we've discovered there are beneficial insects that overwinter in those hollow stalks. We take the tips, clip them off, and put them down around the base of that plant, and then when the insects hatch in their time, they're already in the place they need to be to help us with various other insects in the garden. Next. Next. Ryan has made a lot of beautiful drone shots for us to enjoy this evening. And I love this one that shows the different stages of the cutback from an overhead view. At the top of the screen, you can see how perfectly blended that plant material is, covering like a mulch all over that bed. You can also see in this time the beautiful undulations of each of the beds, which were designed by Pete to specifically show off certain plants at certain times. If you look down toward the bottom of the screen, you can see bed A5, which is still covered with full-size material in its dormancy, then the wall and the triangle bed that's right next to the road, which still need to be cut back. And you can see that orange mower up near the top of the screen again. Next. Another view showing that same work in progress. It's very, very much like tile work to me. Next. Pulsatilla vulgaris is one of the early flowers that comes out up on the left side, you can see these furry buds come out of the ground almost like spiders in their furriness, and they immediately turn into these voluptuous purple blooms, which gradually become the most interesting seed heads. Next. A gorgeous shot by Ryan of Pulsatilla vulgaris in bloom. Next. Next. The crocus, which actually started blooming today, just a week after we finished the cutback on the upper beds, are coming out. And the Crocus thomasinianus rosea is such an early jump up. It is so cute, and there are wonderful little clusters of it in the beds as we speak. These are nicknamed Tommies. Next. Another one that comes up almost at the same time in a different bed, in the C design beds, is Crocus chrysanthus blue pearl. Next. Crocus flavus in the A beds. Next. And in the bird border, Lindera benzoin, which is the allspice shrub, is starting to bloom. It takes a closer look to really appreciate, next, just what beauty there is in those tiny blooms. Next. I have been fascinated from the start, from the very first spring that we experienced with Pete Oudolf's design, how this ephemeral iris jumps up when it's still so cold. If you're lucky, you catch it. It may only last 1 or 2 days because it's susceptible to the frost, nevertheless brave enough to come out anyway. But it gives us this icy blue. Strangely enough, it's called Frozen Planet. That icy blue recurs through all the seasons, and I'll keep referring to it. So take a look at that, and we'll go on to the next slide. Here is a perfect example of that icy blue occurring, and not too long after the Iris reticulata has bloomed. These are in the blue bulb, the little blue bulb group that bloom early in the spring. Pushkinia is one, Scylla mishenkowana is another. They come up in different beds, and they can be almost, if you were just walking by at a clip, you may think you're looking at the same thing. But as with most things in nature, if you look closely, there are amazing differences. Look at how the stamens in the Pushkinia are welded together and form that little tube. So the tiniest of insects or beetles have to go down into that in order to pollinate and make the seeds in Pushkinia. Scylla stamens are loose. If you can see at the points of the arrow, you'll know the difference, and you'll always be able to tell. Next. So many places to look for color and texture in the spring. Birch twigs are swelling and the buds popping open. You see on the left, there's a sedum with almost mathematical repetition of small stems starting to grow. And there is Scylla in mass coming up. Next. This is an OGD primer for narcissus. Sometimes we call them daffodils. I love it that Pete gave us 3 white daffodils, 1 for each of the bed designs. We refer to those bed A, B, and C, and that's a whole nother presentation to discuss the differences in those designs. But for now, and for daffodils, take a look at Sailboat on the left, the earliest of them to come up. A beautiful, creamy, still whitish, but a beautiful, creamy, the longest of all of the centers. And the next one that comes up is Segovia. which has wider petals and a little tip on each of the petals, shorter cup. And the shortest cup of all has a red ring on it, which is Narcissus poeticus variety recurvus, commonly called pheasant eye. Pheasant eye may be the oldest cultivar of all the narcissus. It's also the last to bloom. Next. Now here's your test. Can you tell me which is, and you don't have to answer out loud, but take a look and see the creamiest of all in the A beds on the left is Narcissus sailboat. And the one with the red ring around the shortest cup on the right is pheasant's eye. Next. Species tulips are so much fun, and they're so dynamic, because on a day like today, when they're out, those petals open so wide you'll never guess they were a tulip. You have to see them, like the one in the lower center on the right. On a cloudy and a cool day, when they seem to know there are no pollinators around, and they are closed up, and they also close up at night when it's cooler and the pollinators are not around. But this is to see all of the species tulips on one page. This is what they all look like. Next. Once in a while, we get an odd bulb we think just got mixed up at the tulip farm. And this one on the left, which doesn't match the descriptions of any of the others, the closest one is Tulipa linifolia, which we're supposed to have, but it has a very different leaf. Sometimes you'll see a curiosity like that, and we live with that because we like the surprise. Next. There are two muscaries, or grape hyacinths, in the seabeds, and it's so amazing that they are so much alike. I think for 2 or 3 years I puzzled over why would Pete Oudolf choose two so closely resembling each other. And it finally dawned on me when it began to sink in, because as you know from listening to the talk last month, we keep records on the bloom times. Muscari arminiacum peppermint blooms earlier than Valerie finis. And peppermint is mature enough when Valerie finis comes out that peppermint is showing these white tips, which distinguishes it from the green tips of the Valerie finis. Next. And if you ever are confused about which one is where, you can pull up your map and take a look, and on the bulb maps, you'll see how he has positioned these bulbs. And the purpose, I believe, is that even though they look alike, they bloom at slightly different times, which allows you to enjoy so much the same design in a longer time period. Next. That's the peppermint. Isn't it lovely? And of course, it's in the seabed, so we know that's Segovia narcissus blooming behind it. Next. And last fall, we planted several thousand new bulbs to make up for the thousands of bulbs that were eaten by deer, and some probably by voles. One of those that we planted in the A beds is Leucojum gravetye giant, which is a type of snowdrop, but very large by comparison. The other one is Brodea, which won't come up until later in May. But those are great things we'll be watching for this spring. Next. In the bee design beds, we planted another small bulb, but instead of the icy blue, it has pink tones. There's a wide range of variety in this Cheanodoxa forbesi pink giant. And so it might be darker pink or almost white. And it'll be a joy to find out when they bloom for us, which will only be within a few weeks. Next. In the seabeds, a much taller bulb and also later, as you can see, blooming from May through June. Long life, but bloom time on this Camassia, but it has that icy blue color, doesn't it? It also is preceded in the seabeds by a new bulb to us, Aranthus silicica, winter aconite. And that is a joy to the soul. Really beautiful yellow-green, short, maybe 2 inches, and it's so ephemeral. When it's finished, it disappears within days, and there's no trace of it. Next. It's not just flowers that we look for in the Oudolf garden, but foliage and texture is such a huge part of the design in every season. Monarda bradburyana, which is eastern bee balm, and suffers almost no harm from powdery mildew, comes up with the beautiful pinkish wine leaves covered with these soft velvet hairs, and it's just a gorgeous plant the entire season, and it yields such a bounty of seed heads for the winter landscape as well. Next. As all of these other bulbs are popping up in the upper beds, in the rain garden and in the triangle garden and out in the meadows, the sedges are coming to life, and this is their time to really shine in the cooler months. The Carex bromoides in the rain garden has the most gorgeous yellow-green color. And as you can see, maybe your eyes are sharp enough to catch that little tiny bit of pink in the direct center of that shot on the right. If you enlarge it, there it is on the left, and you see it's that marvelous shooting star. That is really beautiful little bulb. Next, it's also one of our native plants, as is the eastern red columbine, Collegia canadensis. And again, what a great contrast, those cheery orange reds against the yellow green. Isn't that a beautiful picture on the left, the rain garden? Next. Mertensia virginica, you might know as Virginia bluebells, pops up in along the side of the pulsatilla. What's fun about these, and some of you know, some of you might not have heard this, but you see how the flower buds are pink and the flowers are blue? That happens when the nectar has formed in the bottom of the tube. It's the plant's way of letting the nectar eaters know, who will pollinate it, that they are open for business. If it's pink, there's nothing here for you. If it's blue, it's ready to go. Next. So there are 3 Ampsonias. One is the thread leaf, which is so beautiful and the lightest blue of all of them to bloom. Again, that icy blue color. One that's even called, a cultivar that's called blue ice, and another one that's called storm cloud. On the right there, you see those deep, those really dark stems. The picture doesn't do it justice. You have to be there and see it in person to see just how beautiful those stems show in the early spring. But it's nice to see these all 3 side by side and see the little varieties between variations, I mean to say, between the 3 flowers. Next. Then the sages began to bloom. And in the triangle is one of the most prolific bloomers of all the Salvia nemorosa. It is called Blue Hill. It is there's some of it in the bird border as well, especially up near the entrance. But just look at that contrast with with the Carex albicans there behind it. What a gorgeous combination that is. How refreshing. Next. We have all kinds of visitors to the garden, and not just 2-legged humans, but we also get birds. This is a killdeer nest, which is underneath echinacea, and we used to get a lot more than we do as the plants have filled out and there's more vegetation. The killdeer are not as secure. They like to be where they can see what's coming up on them. Here's a shot of all the beds with narcissus blooming. It was a rare spring that allowed the flowers to hang on for an extended period, and that was a real treat. Next. We have in our garden a most rare plant, Simpsoniana meredithiae, variety superba. We're so proud and happy to have Meredith on our team, and she does so much for us. And she's got boots on the brand new boardwalk last April, as it was still unfinished. She's checking it out, and I want to go ahead and click that forward. Thank you. I want to make sure that you have on your calendar for 6:30 Monday, April 7th, the Oudolf Native Meadows presentation that Meredith will be giving to you will be absolutely marvelous. Next. This is the view she was taking in. Again, all the daffodils, all the narcissus in bloom. Look over behind that white truck, which is pulling a dark trailer, and you can see the stems again of the Asclepias or the milkweed that we leave up for habitat. Next. Also last April, because so many plants were not doing well with the groundwater so high in the triangle bed, we added about 52 yards of topsoil, put in a whole new topography, and the plants were moved by volunteers and also by Taylor Beaufort's crew. And once the sculpting was finished, you can see the boardwalk under construction behind them in the distance. Go ahead, Sean, next. Then the plants were all put back in place. Immediately they began to thrive and take advantage of their new conditions. If you look really closely, you can see various Siberian iris in bloom, and also in the lower left, some Amsonia blooming. Just watching that bed grow last year was a wonderful experience. Thank you, volunteers. It was more than this crew that assisted with the planting, but every week we're blessed with the greatest helpers. Thank you. Next. Go ahead, Sean. The tip of the triangle shows you those sedges as they were replanted, still early in the spring. And we put in some new digitalis that didn't bloom yet last year. We're expecting it to bloom this year. Parviflora has a kind of tawny chocolate flower with purple veining in it. It's going to be quite beautiful to see. And the other new plant was Armera peltata, which comes from the northwest of the continent. Large, beautiful leaves. It's perfect. And it's situated in the wettest areas of the triangle garden. If you want to go ahead and click again, Sean, we can get a side-by-side for the digitalis that was already there, which was the rusty foxglove, and you can compare the colors. It should be quite a stunning year with both of them in bloom. Next. Amelanchier, such a beautiful tree all seasons. When they're open like this with flower, the Baltimore Orioles come over and over again to sip deeply from the nectar they produce. And of course, then the berries come, and so many birds come to eat those berries. Next. Beautiful combination in the A beds are the purple coneflower called Virgin, one of Pete Oudolf's own hybrids. And the mix of those with the Sporobolus heterolepis, or the prairie dropseed grasses, is quite beautiful. Brian's photograph of the Echinacea Virgin on the left shows you the mature flower with the grass also in bloom. Gorgeous in that sunlight shot, sunset shot. Next. Everywhere you look closely. It is amazing what you will see. Anybody know that's an allium on the left? And the flower bud on the right is a pale coneflower just coming into bud. It's blooming in front of crystal blue sage. Next. Poppies, iris, and that beautiful Monarda bradburyana. Next. Salvias. Next. The blue catches your eye first, doesn't it? That Siberian iris, which is so beautiful in the spring, about a 10-day bloom period. But look on the right at that sparkle of white. That is a plant I don't understand why isn't in everyone's garden. Gelenia trifoliata, those white stars on red calyxes and red stems, is a beautiful plant all summer long. It also has a very delicate presence, especially in the snow in the winter. Next. Two eryngiums, Borgatti, which always sounds to me like an Italian race car on the left. It's the smaller one, the one that's paired with the calaminth, nepeta and nepeta, and Zabelli Big Blue. Look at that blue. Again, traces of that icy blue. Next. The baptisias in the bee beds are spectacular. This one's called Carolina Moonlight. That's the yellow that you see predominance of in this shot. Next. Nothing like stopping to smell the roses. Next. Next. What an incredible little flower this is. Native to Wayne County, Geum triflorum is less than a foot tall. That ferny foliage spreads slowly through the bed, makes a great companion flower, just like Pete has planned around Fatal Attraction, Echinacea. But look at the shape of that flower. Isn't that unusual? Notice also how when the buds come out, they are bent over as though they're too heavy for their stems. It must have something to do with the pollinator that services them. Because once they are pollinated, as you can see in the one in the very center, the tallest one, those stalks start to straighten up. And as the seeds develop, they become these long, fuzzy, pink filaments that when you get a large patch of them, gives you a clear impression of why it's called prairie smoke. Next. Camassia and salvia, what a combination. Next. Next. Several geraniums in all the different beds. Xylostemon in bed A, a beautiful pink with dark center. Max Fry, also in the A beds, also pink, but a white center and a much more compact plant. Also probably a better self-sower, which we don't mind. We move them around wherever we want them. That never-ending bloom of Roseanne in the sea beds is really, really a great thing all through, especially the end of summer. But in our case, it covers over the salvias, which have finished and still provide some beautiful purpley blue in the same area. Terrific weaver, great companion plant. And finally, in the bee beds, a larger clump than Max Frey, but a much bluer blossom, is Geranium renardii. Mounds of silvery green foliage. Next. that xylostamen with a little pop of helenium in the middle there. Next. 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 Look how the light catches the blossoms on the outside ring around Allium obliquum, the lopsided onion. Next. Triangle garden again. Next. See the seed heads of the pulsatilla in the front, in the foreground. Next. There are 5 A beds, and each of the A design beds has its own tall-bearded iris. In bed 1 and bed 4, there are repeat blooming irises, so we see them twice. We see them in the spring and again when it's cool in the fall. Here are the others for you to compare. There will be one more change in A2 because we were not able to, well, we got by some sort of change or mistake, a iris called Redneck Girl, which didn't work out. It just was not producing. So we're going we are on a hunt to find the one that Pete had wanted in the first place. Next. Storm cloud in bloom. Next. Baptisia. Ombre is the name for that shading from white to cream to light blue. We'll see that better in another picture coming up soon. Next. Baptisia lactea was leucantha when it came to us, but the name is changed by botanists and their studies over the last couple of years. It's the latest of all the Baptisias to come up. It has sprouts when the others are almost finished blooming. And you see the seed pods on the right, and they are another beautiful winter interest. They're black against the snow. Next. There is a good look at what I was calling ombre. Do you see how it shades from white to blue and purple? Gorgeous. And the deep, deep purple of Baptisia Midnight Prairie Blues is just gorgeous. Next. And there's Carolina Move Night. If you are looking at the maps online and you want to know how to find the Baptisias, it is the code for that is a green X, and you can see the CM right there, 3 planted together. Next. Next. There we go. I'm not going to name these 2 for you if you don't already know them, because that's Meredith's job next month. Tune in, find out. Next. Hula Dancer is the cultivar name for this selection that Pete made of the Echinacea pallida. What a beautiful flower. So simple, so elegant, so much texture, and the one that gives more than the other 2 in the winter. It's seed pods, which are eaten by the birds and just generally beautiful against the grasses. Next. And now we're into summer. Next. Next. Salvias are winding down. Last summer, we actually planted the meadows. If you look closely, those freckles are actually holes where things were planted. But look up on the upper beds and look at all the plants in bloom. Penstemons in white, there, and so many other things filling out so nicely. Next, speaking of penstemons, the lavender-colored penstemon is Hirsutus, and the white, taller one is Digitalis, because it looks a little bit like foxglove. Next, if you look close at both of them, you'll see little tiny hairs covering the flowers on both species. This one on the right was caught after a heavy dew, and I was amazed at how much moisture those little hairs caught. Next. Next. Stachys with butterfly wheat. Next. Asclepias tuberosa, as we saw in the previous picture, also showing up here with Dahlia purpurea, purple prairie clover. Such an unusual and beautiful plant, native here. Next. Next. Sean, go ahead. I think we skipped a couple of slides. That's all right. This is Asclepias purpurea, one of the most beautiful Asclepias. Purple milkweed. It's in the bee beds. Let's go to the next one. Take a look at, there we go. Next. The swamp milkweed in the rain garden and in the sea beds, also beautiful. Next. And we see the two Star of Bethlehems that we have. The first one is called Nutens, and it's the drooping star of Bethlehem. Has an unusual green stripe on the inside and the back of the petal. Very pretty. Next. The other one is much taller. It comes from a part of Russian country called Sochi, and it's a much longer bloomer. Next. Fatal Attraction, blooming in front of Scutellaria or the downy skullcap. Next. Phlox, Liatris, Limonium. Next. Rattlesnake Master, another amazing native plant. Next. Song sparrows may be the most of the most numbers of birds nesting in the garden that we have. Next. The path between the bird border and the rain garden, beautiful, inviting, lush. Next. Allium Christophi, what a star. Next. Even when the salvias begin to wane, they're still beautiful. The stems are full of such texture and color. Next. Two more fuzzy dwellers in the gardens. Hahatonka, the newest of the little blue stems to be released. And on the right, Amorphicanescence lead plant, another native here. Next. It's quite the color. That was not a touched up photo. Next. Comparing the last Echinops with this Eryngium, the blues are stupendous. Next. The three Stachys, come and see us in the garden. It's much easier to explain the difference with the three in your hand. Next. Rosea, next. Humalo, so dark pink, beautiful. Next. Scott Tilley built this shade tent for us, for which we were so grateful and got such great use out of last summer when we were digging seedlings and getting new plants in. Thank you, Scott, and for all of the helpers that worked with this. Next. All these alliums, each one so very different. Take a look at how they appear. So many different forms, colors. Over in the lower left is one that surprised us. We weren't expecting, hadn't ordered, wasn't part of the design. But we liked it so much, and Pete agreed we now have more of Allium molly. We just planted last fall. It's another thing to look forward to. Next. This is the bunching type. Allium lusitanicum, summer beauty. Pollinators love it. Next. And here's the thing we love to hate. Japanese beetle. In spite of the fact that it can decimate the top 12 inches of any beautiful bunch of Persicaria, I can't help but look at that leaf and still see incredible beauty. We don't spray them. We do collect them and put them in soapy water. Next. Parthenium integrifolium, or wild quinine, has one of the most remarkable flowers. Look how that's five-sided. On the right, you can see, and the little tiny petals that are on each of those five corners open up to a source of nectar, like little sippy cups. Next. 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 Chiananthus virginicus, white French tree. It's in the rain garden. I do hope you can make it down to see that in bloom. It was spectacular last year. Isn't that an unusual appearance? Next. Look at this drone shot Ryan gives us of the seabeds above the wall and the rain garden. Absolutely gorgeous. Look, could be needlework. Next. 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 Tufted hairgrass, which is Dishampsia cespitosa, blooms in late June, early July with these gorgeous gold shimmering seed heads, blooms and then seed heads. This is in the rain garden. Next. 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 What a riot of color. Next. Next. See the Deschampsia, the gold tau on the left in the rain garden. Next. Look at all the beautiful textures as summer grows towards its end and so many plants have finished their bloom. There's still such marvelous texture in all the combinations of leaves and seed heads. Next. Yarrow. Next. More Echolea. This is something, genetic breakdown, that pleased us so well we left it. Next. In all its forms, mature, immature, it's just a beautiful plant. Next. Dahlia purpurea. Look at the bee in the middle. Do you see the orange pollen basket on its leg? that tells you that pollen of the Dahlia purpurea is orange. Next. There it is with Fatal Attraction. Great combination of peats. Next. Lots of visitors. Next. Next. Downy skullcap is such a beautiful plant. It's one of those that really, really grows on you and fastens close once it does. Whether you're looking really close, like on the right, where you can even see the shape of the seeds underneath those blue blooms, but look at it in mass on the left. Once again, that very special blue. Next. The white form of Liatris spicata. But look in the very center of this picture at the exquisite blue of that little blue stem grass. This is the one called Standing Ovation. I think that having that hemerocallis or the daylily, Chicago Apache, there on the left, really sets it off. Next. Heleniums. We shall see if that plant makes it, but we had one good burst, and there it is. Next. Next. You can see the humidity in these pictures from August. That's soapwort on the right, mixed with a sedum called pillow talk. Next. Forms, colors, shapes, textures. Next. Echinops. We have both blue and white. Next. Here is the Eryngium with its companions. What a standout. Next. Next. Tour guides, part of the daily scene at the Oudolf Garden. Next. 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 These birds, the red-winged blackbirds, as you may know, have 2 or 3 broods a year, so it's not unusual to see fledglings being fed late in the summer even. Next. Morning cloak. What a gorgeous butterfly. It's on swamp milkweed. Next. Next. That's that one hemerocallis that we have. Next. Next. Everyone loves purple lovegrass. And it's so beautiful in front of that Pycnanthemum mudicum, the blunt leaf mountain mint. Next. Salvia azurea comes into bloom late in the summer. That, again, that beautiful blue. Next. It's blooming usually at the same time the Vernonia or the ironweed comes into bloom. Next. This is the other mountain mint that we have. This one comes from the Appalachians. It grows by the stream banks there. Next. This is the Liatris called Pycnostachya or prairie blazing star, the tallest of all of them, and it often gets these quirky bends in its long stalk. Next. Again, the Schizachyrium scoparium, the little blue stem standing ovation. The only Rudbeckia we have is this one called Little Henry, which has a rolled petal that's hollow like a quill. Next. And heading into fall, We are ready for a change of color. Next. Things begin to take on russet tones. Next. Look at these late bloomers, the lobelias, cardinal flower, and the great blue lobelia. Could they be more beautiful in that Deschampsia? I don't know. Next. And the bottle gentians next to the Vernonia, the ironweed. Beautiful. Next. 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 There's the Amsonia turning in that beautiful lemon yellow that it does in the fall. That plant gives so much all year round. Next. 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 See the cone heads, the seed heads of the Echinacea pallida. As I was telling you, they are so striking long after the bloom is gone. Next. Next. Rattlesnake Master. Next. These drone shots that are in the next 3 panels are really quite beautiful. Let's go right through them quickly. Next, Sean, just flip at lib. There we go. Just there. Whoops. Keep going forward. There we go. Again. Next. 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 The grasses are never so beautiful as in late summer and fall. Next. In the middle. Next. Shadows are growing long again. You can tell fall is coming round. Next. Next. We have several contractors in the garden. Next. And this group is one of our favorites. Beautiful shots by Ryan of the goats that come to clean up the invasives out from around the Carillon. Next. 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 There's the reblooming iris again and again. Next. Asters beginning to bloom. Next. Goldfinches eating the seed heads. Next. So beautiful. Next. 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 And The geese are in their V formations, and we're moving fast into winter as fall collapses. Next. Now, Sean, just go ahead and about every 3 seconds, just press forward. We're going to go through the winter slides to finish up before the end of the session. And we will, I'll just keep talking while you just keep rolling, and I won't say next every time. These are so many beautiful shots. And one of the most neglected parts of almost any garden is the winter beauty. But look at these shots, and Ryan brings home the gorgeous, gorgeous beauty that awaits those who are able to brave the cold to see detail on detail. In 2023, we had an ice storm, and it brought out elements of detail that were so incredible in the garden. Keep going. That's it. You're doing great. A little visitor there. I think it was a mouse. And again, keep going. A beautiful monument to our friends across the river. Isn't that gorgeous? Looks like needlework again. Just keep rolling through these, Sean. Just keep going right on. Yep. Perfect. Keep going. There we go. Breathtaking. Every fiber coated with ice. Such an incredible sight. And there we go. All through the seasons, all these unusual inhabitants that we have, everything from nesting turtles to amphibians like frogs and toads. Next, all the insects that come and go. Even one day I pulled up and there was a DeKay's brown snake, little tiny baby DeKay's, and doing his job eating pests in the garden as well. Next. Thanks for watching. This is a picture on the right of a flower that just popped open today. These are the Tommies, Crocus thomasinianus, and I do hope you'll make it down. If you are already signed up to volunteer, we'll be dividing forbs very soon, and we've already started the cool season weeding. Don't miss the early bulbs, and thank you again for all your support. I know we're 2 minutes over. Those of you who can hang on, you're welcome to do so. If you need to go, there's no shame in that. Appreciate your being there. Appreciate your coming to the garden. Meredith, will you want to give us any questions?
Hey, Richard, that was so beautiful. There's so many lovely comments about a gorgeous presentation, gorgeous photos, loving your soothing voice, Richard, and your humor. What a beautiful, beautiful plants and images. We do have a few questions, and it's wonderful to see so many of our volunteers online tonight and supporters. Will you be having any plant sales this year? And if so, when?
The answer is yes, and the answer is I don't know yet, but probably. We'd love to have some things as ready in the first week of June or so, but we also know that it takes a while for the seedlings to grow, and we want them to be presentable when we sell them to you.
Exactly. You need more milkweed. That was a comment. And I thought, wait, we have 4 native species of milkweed already. Do you have any comments on that?
I can't help but agree, but I also know that so many of them are also very aggressive growers or seeders.
Yeah.
And for now, because part of our mission is to edit back to the original design that Pete gave us in the upper beds, we wouldn't be able to put any others in there. There may be some things that show up in the meadows that will work for us, but even that we will keep close to the list of the natives in that community, and others that come in will, if they are already on that list of native communities for Lake Plain Prairie, will stay with those, otherwise not.
Exactly. Right. The golden foliage in autumn, I think it was Amsonia hubrichtii, correct?
Yes,
That is an
correct.
amazing 4-season plant. Great. Why do you leave the plants up all winter?
Well, because that is the winter interest, and we not only enjoy them with our eyes, but it's also habitat. So those permanent residents, the birds that stay with us all winter, have seeds to eat and maintain their life. And we would not have those gorgeous photos without those either. But it is a 4 seasons garden. This is not a garden that's just about bloom time. It's a garden about texture. It's a garden about time, and it's a garden about textures and combinations. Pete Oudolf said, and we're very fond of quoting this, I'm not interested in a plant unless it looks good dead.
Right. The full life cycle of plants. Exactly. Is there any plan to screen the parking lot? Yes, Laura, you should come visit. We have a bird border that screens the parking lot, and it's growing in quickly. It's going to be gorgeous this year. Do the goats help in fall? There's a question about the goats.
The goats will come when we can get them. And we've only been doing it once a year, but we contract to have that group come in, and they do a fabulous job because, of course, all their process is organic. And they eat everything from poison ivy to whatever, the Phragmites or whatever is in the way. So
they're incredible.
That's a
yes,
winner.
And they're local, like Richard mentioned. Yeah, they're from a couple of urban farms and farmers in our area. And
yes,
we do have contact information on our website. If anyone would like to know who that is, I think we maybe put some information on Instagram, but we can share more about the goats and the plants and so much. Richard, I think that's all the questions. Just so many kudos and thank yous and wonderful job. And Ryan,
I'll tell you,
photos.
There just is, this whole project has been from the very beginning an incredible exercise in teamwork. And even those who cannot get down on their knees and help have found other ways to support and be appreciative. And we're just so happy for this community that is represented by this garden. So it's a team effort. And thank you so much for being a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for attending, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everyone.